the constitutional design, in that we are now going to discuss about the making of the Indian Constitution. We all know that India has suffered the British colonial rule for nearly 200 years. Indians started to fight back for their freedom from 1857, the first war of independence, to 1947. Finally, Indians are able to attain their freedom. At the end, there was a twist. India has been created, or Indians attained freedom from the British control. Before leaving India, the Britishers ruled India for 200 years, and before leaving India, on the basis of religion, the country, the British India, was divided into two different nations, India and Pakistan, on the lines of religion. So, on the basis of the religious differences, we have Hindus taking into turn of India and Muslims turning into Pakistan states. So, now India has been divided or partitioned into two different countries, India and Pakistan. And in the partition related violence on the both sides at the border, we lost nearly 10 lakh people's valuable lives. Now, it is a very difficult task to draft a constitution for India in which we have very diverse cultures, languages, religions, and which we already experienced a traumatic accident which happened for us with the partition of India, or a great tragedy which happened with the partition of India. Now, moving on to understand the sequential order, how was the Indian Constitution drafted? Let us see now. The Indian Constitution, or the making of the Indian Constitution, was not an easy task. It was a very difficult and a mammoth task to be performed. And that was the time when the Indians, till yesterday, were treated as just subjects who are there to follow the rules and regulations which are dictated by the Britishers. The Indians were treated as second-rated people. The Indians are also termed as Indian dogs. From that situation, we are now moving ahead to the status of a citizenship where you claim your rights. You can be proud to be a citizen of a nation and you have the equal rights with others. So, from the status of a subject, moving on to a status of a citizenship, and where you get the true spirit of nationalism imbibed in your citizenship. This turning phase happened in 1947 for the Indians. So now, after India attained its independence, the Indian people till yesterday who suffered the British colonial rule will no more get the orders from the British Queen, will now elect the people, and they have their own leaders to rule them, to guide them. They will have their own representatives to represent their problems in the assembly halls. So, the changing phase from the status of the subjects to the citizens was during that period. So, now we have to remember a fundamental point here. Till yesterday, they were suffering the colonial laws and rules, or the troubles which were brought by the foreign ruler to them. Now, it is a situation, or is a time to make and draft your own rules and your own regulations. Let us now check how did the procedure went on ahead. After Indians turned from subjects to citizens, the partition which has left out into a great tragedy for us. Many of the Indians lost their properties in India and forced to move to Pakistan, those who are Muslims. In the similar way, the other side, in Pakistan also, many of the Indian Hindus lost their valuable assets and they have to forego them and they have to move towards India in order to save their lives. And many who could not leave or who could not pass on the other side lost their valuable lives. Many disturbances occurred, communal riots broke out, and this partition resulted in a very violent situation at that point of time. And 10 lakh people lost their valuable lives is really a very traumatic incident for all of us. Next, moving on to the other important challenging point, that is princely states. When India was under the British rule also, these princely states are not directly controlled by the Britishers. The Britishers have recognized the princely states as independent kingdoms during that time. They may be small in size, but they have their independent status at that time also. So, out of the partitioned India and Pakistan, we also have 565 independent princely states at that time. Now, the choice is given to the independent kingdoms, kings and the queens, whether they would like to join the Indian Union or would they show their interest to join towards the Pakistan Union. What would be their choice? They are free to make their choice. This right is given to them by the Britishers and they left. So now India is created, Pakistan is created. The independent princely states are given freedom to join any of the parties. So now it's a very, very difficult task to convince all the princely states and make them to join towards the Indian Union and draft a constitution which suits to all the people, whether they are part of British India or not a part of British India, but still they should have a common agreement or a common confidence on the laws which are going to be drafted now. So that is another difficult task. Moving on to the situation. So when we look at the situations on a broader lines, we have one side the religious disturbances happening. We lost many millions of people there, at least 1 million people. And then moving on to the other side, we have 500 plus princely states which are still not confirmed whether they join this side or the other side. So now, for the framers of the Indian Constitution, for the people those are going to draft the Indian Constitution, the situation was very, very unsecure. Today we feel the Constitution provides security for us. Today we are confident that our Constitution is in place. But during those days, the situation was not so supporting and not so secure as it appears today. So from this different situation, the Constitution framers have worked hard, gone through all the relevant constitutions. The countries which are having diverse populations, the countries which have brought systems in place, they have checked everything thoroughly. They have drafted a rough constitution. After drafting a rough constitution, what did they do? We will find out. Moving on to the drafting of the constitution, we called it as the path to the constitution. The path is nothing but a roadmap, the preparation of a roadmap to draft a constitution. First of all, let us look at the broader outlook of India. India has not been a single nation ever since before the British arrival to India. So after Britishers have occupied all the regions and made British India, they have inculcated in Indians the feeling of oneness. Because of the common enemy what we have as a colonial ruler that regenerated among the Indians to fight against the common enemy. During the struggle of freedom movement, it has generated in every Indian, every individual, the feeling of fighting against a common enemy, but along with that, it also made us to reach a common consensus. What is consensus? Consensus is coming to a common agreement on anything, coming to agreeing someone's opinion with acceptance. How do we agree with others' opinion? Because of the Britishers' rule, we learned many things. For example, the Britishers have given the right to vote only to 1% of the Indians, which means that there is a clear discrimination on the basis of this. There is no universal adult franchise, which means we learned that this kind of discrimination results in the untrue representation of the people's leaders. It will not give any chance to get the exact representation of the people's leaders or people's representatives. When there is no true representation, there is no possibility to get a good laws which are related to people's problems. So the people's problems will go unheard. So this we experienced during the British rule. So almost all the leaders of that moment as well as the people agreed that there should be equality, especially right to vote. When we are voting, we should give chance for every individual irrespective of their color, caste, creed, race, sex, religion or any aspect. We should inculcate the habit of being responsible citizen by making them right to vote, so that the true representation of the people will be happened by elections. So we learn like this many things by under the British rule, which forced all the Indians to fight against the Britishers, as well as to come to a common conclusion that we need to have this kind of rules, we should not have that kind of rules. Which we should not have means we should not have the rules which are discriminating the Indians with the other Indians, which happened during the British rule. So this Britishers one way have enlightened all the Indians to be what they have to be, and they also showed what should not happen or what they should not face by following certain discriminatory policies. That is the first one when it comes to consensus. And the freedom movement, yes, today in India we have 29 states and 7 union territories. India is a very wide range of land where we have nearly 32 lakh square kilometers of area, which means it's very wide all along the east to west and the north to south. So it was not an easy task to combine all the people and make them to fight against a common enemy. So the leaders who are inspiring the people all over the India, it has become a very difficult task to make all of them to agree on the common lines. But the freedom struggle, day by day, it became stronger, and it inculcated in the people the feeling of nationalism, the spirit of nationalism. Nation means not land and its boundaries. Nation means nothing but the people who share a common value, who share common land boundaries. So the people, those who are living in that nation, are called the nationalists. So the spirit of nationalism got imbibed in them, got uplifted in them during the struggle for the freedom movement. And during this freedom movement only, as I mentioned earlier, the consensus concept, the common agreement, the common enemy concept forced the Indians to turn strongly against the Britishers, and this has not made us to fight against the foreign ruler, but it actually made us to regenerate our country's pride, our country's social status, and our country's knowledge to spread to the all corners of the world. Because we are ruled by the Britishers, we were treated as a second rated people in our own country. But in actually, when we look into the history, Indians have given a lot to the world. The concept of zero was first started in India. The mathematics, the astronomers, the medicine, the knowledge of scientific approach, all these have their seeds in India. But as the foreigners have dominated the Indian rule, they started to treat Indians as the second rated people. So this also forced Indians not only to come to common consensus of fighting against a foreign ruler, but also regenerated the feeling of nationalism and also the true spirit of Indian nationalism to fight against the foreign ruler. So yes, coming to the common and the fundamental question, are there no differences between the people, or did they subside their differences to write a constitution? What did they do? Yes, there are sharp differences in the opinions of how the government should be, or what should be the functioning of the government, but there was no difference on what type of government should India have in future after the Britishers' rule comes to an end. Almost all the parties, almost all the individuals preferred to have a democratic setup, not at all a monarchic setup or not at all any other setup. They want a setup in which the people's representatives will have the true power. It's not the individual holding the power. it is the people's representative holding the power. So that's why Indians have preferred to go for parliamentary democratic setup. Now coming to the other point, are there no differences? Yes, there are sharp differences on the way the law has to be drafted, on the way the policy has to be executed, but no one has disagreed on certain common principles of having equality, liberty, freedom of religion. So certain basic aspects are agreed by all and invited by all to be followed with equal respect and mutual concern. So there are sharp differences, but they never lifted up their voices against certain common basic ideas which they need, and they thought it is a need of the hour. And now we need to have this common understanding that we all belong to one nation, and we all are people of one nation and have equality. We all are the citizens of the same nation. We all have rights in our own country, and we do not need to surrender ourselves to somebody or to forego our interest for one reason or the other reason. We are free to follow any religion. Like this, certain basic ideas all agreed and accepted.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel to get more videos on CBSE syllabus.